Good afternoon, everyone. Andy Jacob here with the .com Magazine Entrepreneur Spotlight Series, and I have an amazing show today. You know, when we go to the grocery store and we go to places and we look at food, we take it for granted that there's so much going behind the scenes to keep our food safe and sound. I've been able to book Mr. Joseph Samra on the show today. Joseph is the founder and managing director of GMCS. He is one of the worldwide leaders in food safety. I've been waiting to get him on the show for a number of weeks. What his company does is amazing. They are experts at quality assurance in the food industry. They're keeping us safe. And I've always wanted to know about how all the food through all the ecosystems remain safe and sound for us to consume. And Joseph is one of the worldwide experts in this. Joseph, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Joseph, this is very interesting. We go to the store, we eat food, we take it for granted that our food is safe. Your company, GMCS, the Global Management Consulting Service, you work with some huge players to make sure that our food standards and safety stays where it needs to be to keep us healthy. So let's pull the lens back a little bit, Joseph, and just tell us a little bit about GMCS.
So GMCS is a food safety consultancy service. We provide food safety consultancy services, as well as we provide training, and we do audit.
It's 10 o'clock.
For food safety in order to ensure the safety of the supply chain. So we don't only provide food safety consultancy, but as well we provide all required standards related to food, including quality, ethical trade, and even we have some standard related to packaging.
See, Joseph, this is absolutely amazing. It's very important. You've become one of the go-to experts worldwide with GMCS for companies trying to bring you aboard so that they can ensure their food safety. Very important. You work with huge brands. You also do safety with packaging and storage and distribution. Let's pull the lens back just a little bit. When I go to the store and I pick some food, I'm going to assume that that food is very safe. But tell us what's going on behind the scenes a little bit at the production sites to make sure that that food gets safe to my table.
Yeah, so in order to have a safe food and you can consume the food safely, there is a huge number of standards that govern the safety of that product, including standard related to food safety, standard related to packaging that will be used to package the food, as well as standard related for storage and distribution of that food. As well, there is other standards that govern the ethical trade and social responsible sourcing for that product.
See, that's unbelievable because, again, we go to the store, we pick out some fruit or some vegetables or something in a package, and we just consume it, and we take it for granted that we're going to be safe. But really, behind the scenes, there's companies like GMCS that are consulting with the food manufacturers to make sure that we do consume safe food. So you've worked and do currently work with some of the biggest players in the world with regard to food distribution. So do you sometimes get startups that want to be in the food space that reach out to you and say, Joseph, I want to be in the food space. I want to, do a delivery service, or I want to produce a food, or I have a new type of, ketchup or a new salsa or some new pizza that I want to freeze up and send to the consumer. Do they contact you as well, Joseph, and say, hey, what do we do to make sure our food is safe?
Definitely. Whenever any person have an idea in producing food, there is a standard that he need to implement before starting. So we help the client in order to prepare the plant for the plant, select the required equipment and right material for the production, as well as help him implementing the required standard in order to meet the legal requirement and the client requirement as well. Since
See that?
For each type of product, you have a standard, and as well the client, as a big brand, if he need to do co-packing, they have their own specification and standard. So we have them implement those standards.
That's awesome. Now, I would imagine, Joseph, that there are standards in the United States, but also different standards internationally. So if I want to deliver my food on an international basis, is that a different level of complexity that you help these companies with?
Yeah, so whenever you are producing food, you have to apply a local regulation and the regulation for the market where the product will be sold. Since each state, each country has its own regulation, so you have to apply or abide by those regulations. We have clients overseas in Africa and Middle East to implement a requirement, since a lot of commodities are imported to the United States, and those commodities require specific regulation, food safety standard based on client requirement, even on U.S. requirement. We have the Food Safety Modernization Act that require each exporter or importer to the require each importer to the United States to have its to implement the requirement of the Food Safety Modernization Act. So we provide consultancy to help this company implement those requirements. We provide the required training, as well as we help them to ensure that the safety and quality of the product are definitely implemented.
Wow, that's incredible. And again, we go to our store, we go to our local supermarket, Joseph, and we take for granted oftentimes that everything in there is going to be safe and sound for ourselves and for our families. But behind the scenes, what's really going on is there's a network of very, very important work and very, very important companies that are assuring that the food in our ecosystem is safe to eat. If we look at all of the countries right now, Joseph, who has the most stringent standards for food safety?
We can say it's a international regulation. So you have the Codex Alimentarius that have a standard for food safety, standard for the facilities that produce the food safety. So it depends based on the authority or local authority how it enforces to implement the food safety regulation. But recently, a lot of regulation are enforced, and the regulation are changed to emphasize or strengthen the requirement of implementing the required food safety regulation due to the high product recall and high problem related to food safety. For that reason, a lot of regulation are being implemented, and especially clients, international clients want to ensure their supply chain, especially during COVID, where the supply chain was impacted and they need to search for a new supplier. For that reason, those new suppliers should be audited to ensure that those suppliers are providing as a required product up to the quality and safety required by the clients that need to manufacture those products, or even the retail or the co-packing. So the co-packer need to ensure that his brand or his brand is safe, doesn't cause any problem to his, since any problem related to food safety will have impact on the brand reputation. For that reason, not only implementing a safety a safety system and the quality management system for the industry is important. However, the food safety culture at the site that produce the food is important, since you need to ensure how the food is produced without someone monitoring. So you cannot monitor each employee working in the food industry. However, you have to work on increasing the awareness by increasing the food safety culture, so the employee know what his responsibility, what he has to do without being monitored or requested to do that.
Joseph, that makes a lot of sense. So the employees themselves at the food plants or at the food packaging plants or at the food uh, distribution plants, they need to be trained about the culture, because it sounds like those people are on the front line. So Joseph, when you go in with GMCS and you work with one of these large companies, you also work on the culture for the employees so that they can understand how important food safety is on that front line. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, so we provide also required training for all level of employee. We provide BRC Global Standard training for food safety, for packaging, and for storage and distribution. Also, we provide all quality management system training, such as risk assessment training, root cause analysis training. So all this training required to be to develop the knowledge of the employee, so they can understand what are the responsibility in case of any deviation or non-conformity, what kind of investigation should do, what mean root cause analysis to determine the appropriate corrective action for the identified nonconformities. So we provide a wide range of training designated for the development of employee knowledge. Our training services are approved. So we are approved training provider by the BRC Global Standard. Also, we provide the FSPCA training, the approved scheme required for personnel to attend in order to become approved PCQI or preventive control qualified individual.
That's amazing.
And we have a key point that we deliver our training in several languages. So we provide our training in multiple languages, so we can make sure that the employee are trained on their own language, so it will be easier for them to understand, and we explain them in the easiest way.
Wow, that's incredible. And this is a comprehensive program that GMCS is known for. This is one of the reasons why Joseph Samra, who I've really enjoyed getting to know on this show and prior, is one of the worldwide leaders in food safety. When we think about different countries, Joseph, is there one country right now that seems to be really producing more food than ever before and are distributing more food than ever before throughout the world?
Basically, all the food production are increased, and there is a lot of demand on food. So the retail business during COVID was affected. However, the manufacturing side was the demand increased on the food. So for that reason, the demand increased on the auditing and ensuring the supply chain, approving the supplier, as well as training the employee on the appropriate requirement to ensure the safety of the product. And as well, the same methodology used in food safety plan was used to prepare the COVID plan. So as the same methodology used in food safety was implemented during the pandemic, that had to implement the required control measure to prevent problem in the food industry. How to put control measure in place, what control measure required based on specific risk assessment.
Joseph, I'm listening to you speak. The people watching the show are listening to you. The people that are listening on the podcast, and what they're hearing is a very, very evolved business, a very, very technical business, if you will, in regards to food safety. So let's talk about GMCS just for a minute. When a company contacts you, Joseph, and they say, hey, Joseph, we've heard about all you're doing. We know that you're working with other international companies. We want to bring you on board. What's the number one thing, if there is one, that they bring you in to help them with?
As the top management commitment. This one help a lot. So since implementing food safety is not easy, it needs a lot of resources. So if you don't have a top management commitment required to invest in the required infrastructure as well to train the employee and allocate the required time to implement the system, you will not succeed.
Okay, so let's talk about that. So they contact you. You need to get this top management commitment. Do you work with top management one-on-one? Does your team work with the top management? How does it all work?
Yeah, basically, first you need to start with the top management to explain to them the requirement, what they need to invest, to also to review the policies required for the proper implementation. And once you get their approval, you can proceed with the head of department. So each department, they have a specific responsibility in food safety. So you train and develop this department and prepare the required procedure and deliver the required training.
That's amazing. So you start with the top, you work your way down, you get the buy-in from the top management, you help them understand what they need to have a fruitful business, pardon the pun, with regard to food safety. You know, Joseph, I'm listening to you, and obviously, you know, you've become this leader in the field, a worldwide expert, a global expert, and GMCS is one of the leading management consulting services in the food and quality assurance space. So people listening to the show, they're probably interested a little bit in your background. Like, Joseph, how did you get started in this, and how did you become one of the leaders in food safety and food quality in your career?
In order to become expert in that field, you need basically to have the education background. So I have a master's degree in food technology and nutrition. Then I attended several continual education training in quality and food safety. And you need to keep up to date with all the standard update and scheme requirement. So it's not a matter of couple of training and you will become expert or approved. It's a matter of years working and attending and accumulating the required experience.
Joseph, that makes a lot of sense. You know, we do get some younger entrepreneurs watching the show. They're probably watching and they're saying, wow, this gentleman, you know, Joseph Samra has been able to build a wonderful company at GMCS. He's become a leader in the field. He's a go-to expert. His company is a go-to company for worldwide brands in the food industry. But they're probably saying to themselves, how did he get started? What type of advice does Joseph have for younger entrepreneurs wanting to start their business, you know, knowing that those younger entrepreneurs are probably going to have some potholes along the way and maybe have some mistakes and some challenges, but they're going to need to keep powering through to get through those challenges. What type of advice, Joseph, do you have for the younger entrepreneurs that are starting their own company right now?
Okay, being an entrepreneur is not easy. So you need to be persistent. You need to work hard. You don't have any time for a vacation or break. Whenever you have a work to do, you have to stay up late to conduct and finish your work on time. So basically, once you need to start your own business, you need to focus on that business. It might take you 7 days a week, especially with different time zone working, so you can stay up late and maybe sometimes not being able to sleep in order to keep your clients satisfied and make sure that all the requirements are being implemented.
I love it. So persistence and determination, the good hard work, pounding the pavement, these are things that are very commonly heard from successful entrepreneurs like Joseph and many of the others that we have on the Entrepreneur Spotlight series. So that makes a lot of sense. Let's jump back into GMCS for a little bit more time. I know you're very busy helping to keep the food supply and the food chain and all of our food safe throughout the world, Joseph. So again, I wanted to thank you for coming on the show. But I did have some other questions for you with regard to food safety. When the food comes into the supermarket, the big supermarket, and it's actually there on the shelves and the fruit and the vegetables are there as well, is there a food safety component as well in the supermarket that the supermarket chains have to attend to once the food arrives to their store?
Yeah, definitely. Whenever they receive the product, they need to inspect this product to ensure that they were transported at the right temperature. And the same, they need to source that product, the storage of the product. They need to ensure that the right temperature is required for frozen food, for chilled products. So it depends. There is specific requirement or guidelines that the supermarket need to follow, as well as you have the basic requirements such as cleaning and disinfection for the food contact surfaces.
That makes sense. And I would imagine that the supply chain, the transportation of the food is very important as well. Something that's always remarkable to me, Joseph, is I can go into a store and I can buy an apple for 10 cents. Let's just say 10 cents, a bag of apples for $1. Very inexpensive. And I always think about what it took to get that apple to that supermarket. Somebody had to grow it, somebody had to pick it, or a machine had to. Someone had to store it, someone had to clean it, someone had to inspect it, someone had to make sure that it was edible, someone had to transport it, somebody had to pull it out of the truck, somebody had to put it on the next truck, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera,
Yeah,
et cetera.
so basically from farm to fork.
Okay, so from farm to fork. Okay, so you've got it. You said it better than I. So let's talk about that. So to me, Joseph, it seems like food is really not that expensive when you look at all the steps involved with farm to fork. Am I wrong about that, or how does it all work?
Producing food, it's not inexpensive. It costs a lot, since depend how much investment you need to do in order to, from where you purchase your materials that you want to manufacture or your product, what standard you are requiring, what kind of added value you need to ensure that the product is safe, what type of certification. So all these are an extra investment on the product. You can not being certified, don't think any quality or food safety management system. However, the quality of the product, it might not at the level, at the same level with other products that they are certified, and where the manufacturer or producer put a lot of money to make the product up to the required level. And you have the grading for the product. So you have different grade of product, different type of certification. Even you have the organic, the conventional product. So all these affects the price of the product. So it depends. It's your choice.
That's incredible.
However, the food safety, it should be implemented. It's not a choice.
See, 100%. And it's outstanding and astounding at the same time when you can walk in, anyone can walk into a giant supermarket and look at all the food. And then a half mile away, there's another supermarket with all the food. And then you can walk into Walmart with all the food. And then 4 miles away, there's another Walmart or a Costco with all the food. There's so much food being produced for consumption for the human, race, that it just makes sense that it is a very technical expertise necessary behind the scenes to make sure that all of that immense amount of food is safe for us to eat. And Joseph, that's really something that we really should be thankful to you for, and people like you to help keep us and our families safe and sound with regard to all of the food that we consume. So thank you very much for all the good work that you do. I just have one last question on entrepreneurship that I want to get from you before you have to leave. And I know you're traveling internationally as well as throughout the United States on the West Coast, East Coast, Central. So again, thanks for slicing out this time for me. Joseph, when we think about entrepreneurship and we think about employees, because GMCS has a group of people that work with and for you, what's the most important thing you look for when you're hiring someone to join your team?
Basically, I look for the education background, since, as I told you, we work with, we need technical people. So you can train people. However, if they don't have the education background, it will not be easy for them. For that reason, we choose the employees that have the right education background, and then we can work and train them on the requirement and the standard and how we can implement those requirements.
That makes a lot of sense. So education for the younger people watching. And of course, you have to have communication skills.
Yeah, definitely. The communication skills to so you can communicate properly with the client, help him, provide the requirement that he needs, and keep the client satisfied as well.
100%. And obviously GMCS does that very well based on your long list of world-class companies that you've been able to help throughout your career, Joseph. I wanted to thank you so much for coming on the show today. This has been very enjoyable for me. I really believe that the people behind our food are really some of the most important people in the world, like you, Joseph, that keep us safe. And I will never take it for granted what goes on behind the scenes after this interview. And I'm sure that people watching the show also will think a little bit more about the next time they go to the store and they pick some fruit or some vegetables or some meat or whatever else they're going to take home, on how important it is for companies like GMCS to keep the food supply safe. So Joseph, thank you so much for coming on the show today. This has been an absolute pleasure to have you.
Thank you for having me.